So my name is Vinodh, and the topic of the hour is Metaverse as a service. So Metaverse being a very new topic, what I'm going to do is first introduce the concept of Metaverse. What is Metaverse? And then talk about Metaverse as a service, and then finally end with how Metaverse would change our lives, and talk about retail a bit, right? So in order to in order to understand how Metaverse would evolve, let's first look at how the phone and mobile phone industry evolved, right? So let's start with that. So phones back in the days were car phones. Mobile phones were actually car phones because it needed huge infrastructure just in the boot of the car. So this is the transmitter and the receiver, and if anyone has to make a call, they can call from only the car. So that's how it used to be, and this is anything but smart, right? So phones were just mobile phones until something like this happened.
Remember the guy?
1 minute, let me add audio as well. Share computer side. Okay.
Guy with the magic wand made rabbits disappear? Well, seems he got a job at Ericsson. Invented this magic wand. Now he wants electronic notepads, mobile phones, organizers, and stuff to disappear. You see, the Ericsson R380 is all in one. With WAP, email, and a personal organizer. Rabbits not included. The new Ericsson R380. We call it a smartphone.
So,
remember the guy with the...
So the smartphone was here in 1994. It was the first ever smartphone was made by IBM. It's called IBM Simon, and it had a touch, and they had a stylus to control it. You can browse the internet, receive emails, and all that. And it even had an app. It even had apps basically. So in today's money, if you were to buy the same product, it would cost you $1,800. Not bad for a very first smartphone, right? So, but then you can see it's not color rate, right? We haven't got color phone, and that happened 4 years later with Siemens S10, and that was the first color phone that came in. But we are still stuck in Web 1.0 here. So why I say that Web 1.0, when you look at a feature phone like this, you can clearly think that it's not going to be interactive. You can just probably receive emails and view some static web pages. That changed very soon because 3G networks were launched in 1998. And once that happened, the precursor to the modern smartphone started coming in, the Palm phones, and this one is the Nokia phone. They had this 8 MB of storage, which was a very big deal back then, and a color display as well. Now, in 2002, the entire 3G standard went worldwide, and every country started adapting it and there was a mass adoption for 3G. And once that happened, we started having phones which are more feature rich, and BlackBerry phones was one such thing. It was just the beginning of it was the cusp of the biggest revolution in smartphone industry that's about to happen. In 2004, we had this Nokia 6630, which was called as the first truly global phone. I had one of this phone. This was my daily driver back in 2004. And you can download MP3 files, you can download videos, you can in fact download applications from the internet, jar files, and then have apps as well. But still something was missing because it still didn't have a coherent operating system, nor did it have a good user experience, and there was no app stores as well. So in 2005, something very remarkable happened. Google acquired a company called Android, which was having an Android operating system, which was meant for cameras, basically. It's a touchscreen operating system meant for cameras. And in the very same year, Apple acquires a company called Fingerworks, which makes capacitive multi-touch peripherals. And Fingerworks is the company that invented this capacitive multi-touch technology. Until then, it was all resistive touch, which was very difficult to handle with hand. So once this has happened, in 2 years' time, the market started bringing in capacitive touchscreen phones, and LG was the first one to introduce that. And this is the most important moment after this, right? So just few days after this, the most important thing in our smartphone industry happened.
An iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator. An iPod. A phone. Are you getting it? And we are calling it iPhone.
So the iPhone was released. So the thing with iPhone being revolutionary in 2007 is because Apple's approach towards the smartphone was completely different. They took their Mac OS and then made it adaptable for a mobile smartphone kind of a form factor. So that way, their operating system was fully functional. But even in Apple standard, way back in 2007, this was very basic, yet it was revolutionary, right? And then in 2008, Android OS came in, and HTC Dream was the first ever Android phone. And Apple followed it up with another revolution, which is the App Store that they introduced in 2008. This was big because this basically empowered the creator economy, which means developers like you, techies in all the companies and the individuals started building apps for each and everything that you can imagine, right? So, and thus what started was the complete overhaul of converting from normal phones to smartphones and the phones we know it today. And in the very next year, 4G came into existence, which again changed the game completely. So from this point till today, the life of smartphones has only evolutionarily changed, what I would call as incremental innovation. There wasn't huge, big breakthrough innovations. It was just incremental. We kept adding, improving the screen size and things like that. Okay. Now let's take a step back and think what worked for Apple in 2007. Why is that moment in 2007 called as revolutionary for the smartphone industry? Yes, it's because Apple's disruptive innovation is a convergence of multiple inventions. Inventions like the resistive to capacitive touchscreen change, and the availability of 3G networks, and getting rid of the physical keyboard. Things like that converged, and that is how that disruption happened. Right, and the larger 4G network, faster adoption also helped it in a big way. 3G was helping, and Apple was genius to come up with the App Store. So this is the journey of smartphones and how this thing happened, right? This revolution happened. Why am I talking about this? Because we believe, many technologists today believe that we are now in 2007. The Apple moment for Metaverse is here, right? So that's what everyone is believing now, because the components needed to build the Metaverse is already here. The hardware, the network required, 5G is already here. The infrastructure, the decentralization, which is the blockchain technology, is already 10 years old, and all the individual components are there. And even more importantly, big companies are pouring in big money. Right? Billions and billions of dollars are being poured into Metaverse today to create the future experience that we all do not know we need. Right. So, and if you look at numbers also in 2024, we are going to already see multi-billion dollars of revenue opportunity through Metaverse, and more than 60% of Gen Z are already in Metaverse, some form of Metaverse. They are already they are waiting to see virtual worlds of their favorite brands. And we all know that Mark Zuckerberg is already into it. He's invested a huge money. Microsoft has their own strategy. And so all this is happening. Now, what is Metaverse, right? So I came up with this beautiful, components of what Metaverse is. Now, let me explain what is Metaverse. So the Metaverse is a massively scaled and interoperable network of real-time rendered 3D virtual worlds, which can be experienced synchronously and persistently by an effectively unlimited number of users with an individual sense of presence and with continuity of data, such as identity, history, entitlements, objects, communications, and payments. I know you all got what I said. I know what you're also thinking. I'm not defining book here, right? So let me simplify this for you all. What is Metaverse? So the definition that I told you is the actual definition of Metaverse, but then let's simplify this. So Metaverse is nothing but interconnected experiences. So an experience where you are completely in a virtual world, and a virtual world doesn't mean not being in the physical world. It could also mean that you are in the physical world, which is augmented with digital elements, and experience work, leisure, anything that you can imagine, your life as a digital twin in another world altogether. That is metaverse. And to understand the impact of metaverse, think about what electricity had done to the entire world, right? Every single mechanical machine that we had until that point had to be electrified, because the benefits of electricity was huge. Same was the internet. Once the internet was introduced, every single company in the world wanted to have a .com address for themselves, right? And once the smartphone happened, people wanted to build their own mobile apps. Everyone wanted to have it. While everyone jumped in, it took few years for people to understand what is the purpose of each of these things, right? So for example, in the beginning of internet, everyone will talk about we have www.soandso.com, right? So they would just put out a site without knowing what to do with it. It took few years to understand they could build an e-commerce site, and they understood how to use internet to the benefit of corporates. It's the same. You can expect the same thing to happen in metaverse as well. So at the foundation of metaverse lies these things like network, which is the 4G, 5G, and things like that, hardware, and the decentralization. That is the foundation on which there is discovery. Think of things like Google for metaverse, and creator economy. You and me would create content, which will all be leveraged to build the experience of the future. So that is metaverse in a nutshell. Now let's look at few elements of metaverse, right? What is metaverse? So metaverse is persistent. That means today when you go and play a game, the moment you leave the game, you cease to exist in the game, right? You or either it gets paused. Whereas in metaverse case, this will be a digital twin of you, which will continue to exist in the digital world and will mimic what you do. And metaverse is synchronous and live, which means it's always present and it is always live. And let's say you and me go into a coffee shop in a public space and we are having an interaction. Another friend of ours happened to go into the same coffee shop. He will be able to see us and then come and join us and have a conversation, right? So it's completely possible for these kind of experiences to happen in metaverse. Metaverse is unlimited, which means in today's world, be it Fortnite game or anything, even this Zoom call, for example, right? The Zoom has only, you can have a interactive Zoom call for 50 people or maybe even 100 people. But beyond that, Zoom themselves recommend that go for a webinar kind of a mode, because actively letting hundreds or thousands of people talk at a time is not something that our current processing power and service handle seamlessly. It will still work, but it will have limitations. Whereas in the metaverse world, this will be completely unlimited. It's a fully functional economy, which means you and me can create digital goods, and we can own pieces of land in the metaverse. We can invest in land, sell different digital objects like non-fungible tokens of a t-shirt or whatever it is, and also perform some activities in the metaverse and get rewarded for it. It's pervasive, which means it's present both digital and physical. The most common misconception about metaverse is, the moment we say metaverse, people say it's virtual reality, 3D gaming and all that. That is what we think today, but in the future, so things like holographic 3D projection, which is something like you have this projector today, which shows content in 2D. What if the content shows up in 3D and it fills up your room, right? So then you have no distinction between what is physical and what is digital in your living space. So that is how pervasive metaverse will eventually become. It will be interoperable. So today, whatever photos you had uploaded in your Facebook, right? Those Facebook photos, if you want to move them to Google Photos, it's a big pain. You will also lose all the metadata and things like that, because they don't work with each other. It's not interoperable. Whereas if in the future, there will be multiple metaverses, and all of those are decentralized metaverses, and you can basically move your digital items, avatars, and assets between all these metaverses. So a single entity, you will be the same. You will wear different clothes for work. You will wear different clothes for leisure and things like that, just like how we live in the real world today. And the last part is distributed creator economy. So this is very important, because metaverse, unlike Web 2.0, which is the current world we live in, the Facebook and Google worlds, every metaverse, there will be multiple metaverses. There is not a single one. There will be multiple metaverses, and each of these metaverses will not be owned by a single person. ideally speaking. It will be owned by a community of creators and contributors, right? So these contributors will get votes, and they will decide everything from adding new land in the metaverse to fixing on a date for an event and everything that you can think about. So this association, like an association we have for our apartments, right? So this association is called a decentralized autonomous organization. They get a vote, they decide what needs to be done, and that's how the entire economy is done. No CEO calls the shot. That's the difference here. Having said all of this, today when you look at metaverse, it's people would rebrand what they have as augmented reality and virtual reality and mixed reality for that matter, and then call that as metaverse. That is not what metaverse is all about. Metaverse would be much more than that we all understand, but we need to live with that for today. In the future, we would have, near future is like a couple of years away from now, we will have much better experiences, which is having a completely integrated metaverse. You can move between metaverses and things like that. There will be, so the big companies that are investing today will come up with great innovations, and they will fit in or they will die off. So all this you can expect to happen in the near future. But in the distant future, which is like more than 3 to 5 years, what would happen is we will not be able to distinguish between what is physical and what is digital. So things will become omnipresent, and you will have a completely new experience when it comes to our lives itself. And when I say this, people might feel it is scary, but think of how the smartphone is today, right? The smartphone, most of us do not live with more than 20 minutes away from our smartphone, right? We all always have it with us, but still, if we want, we can keep it aside and then go and have a we can go for a trek and things like that. So the same thing will apply in the metaverse as well. So you will be able to live in the physical world, but always go away and go away for a trek or something and come back and use the metaverse. So, and finally, this metaverse thing is going to be like anybody's guess, the distant future. Nobody knows how it's going to play out, but these are the predictions. This is how it's going to play out. Now, one other element I wanted to highlight is the misconceptions about metaverse. So metaverse is not just these things. So the first thing is, it's not a virtual world. It's not just a virtual world, because in virtual worlds, for example, Age of Empires is not a virtual world, but it's a virtual game. So if you look at Age of Empires, you see AI driven, virtual human beings walking around fighting and all. These are synthetic and fictional elements, right? So whereas in metaverse, it will be filled with real people along with fictional elements. So then metaverse is not a virtual space like Second Life. Second Life is the closest you can get, or like one of the pioneers when it comes to building something like metaverse. But a true metaverse is completely decentralized, whereas Second Life is a centralized space. So that's not what it is. Then metaverse is not a virtual reality experience or a mixed reality experience like what Oculus will give you, because just having a presence in a virtual environment doesn't make it metaverse. It has to all come into a digital environment. And the metaverse is not just a digital or a virtual currency, because we already have World of Warcraft and games like that where this is already happening, wherein real people will buy digital goods and then sell it off to another real person and in exchange of real money, right? So these are already there. To say that metaverse is just a virtual economy is not right, because we will live in the metaverse from the beginning of the day till end of day. So that's how it will eventually evolve into. And it's not a game, because metaverse is beyond game. It is serious stuff. It's not just playing around and things like that, while that is also there. Finally, virtual experiences like theme park, like we have stores in the metaverse. These are not metaverses. These are objects that we can visit, experiences that we can visit inside the metaverse. And so that's not what it is. And it's not an app store. I don't have to say about that. And metaverse is not just user-generated content platform. If we were to say that, it's like saying Facebook and YouTube is internet. That's not the case, right? So so user-generated content platform will play a major role in metaverse, but that's not what metaverse is all about. Okay, so we have seen what metaverse is, what metaverse is not. So and by now you know metaverse is all about experience, right? So I would like to show you an experience instead of me just talking all the time about this metaverse. So what we are going to do is we are going to visit Decentraland. Decentraland is a decentralized metaverse, and so they have a fixed amount of land which you can go and buy if you want. Go to decentraland.com, you can go and buy land, and in order to buy the land you have to use their currency. It's like going to a foreign country, you would use their currency, right? Similarly, in Decentraland, the currency being used is called mana, which is built using the Ethereum blockchain. So the idea is it's a decentralized currency, being the currency in Decentraland. You can buy that, and then you can build experiences on top of it, right? You can build a store, you can build a game if you want, and you can reward people as you want. So we are going to go into the JP Morgan's store and JP Morgan's office and retail store from distance. Take you there. I'm kind of rushing, but I hope I'm understandable because there is so much to talk about. Yeah, so this is the Decentraland space, metaverse, and this is the current metaverse that we are talking about. It's as real as it goes, right? So I am in the Metajuku district. That's me, my digital avatar, by the way. I'm in the Metajuku shopping district, and you have different stores. So different stores here. Let's go into the DressX store first. So this is the DressX store. DressX sells headgears and apparel, which are all digital in nature. They don't give you physical any physical goods. It's all digital. So basically, they're just showing how you can experience the product in augmented reality if you were to download their app and use it. So they use the storefront to do a video like that. So let's pause and then go into the store now. Yeah, as you can see, they have this digital headgears that I could buy if I want, and there are some apparels here. I can't wear that apparel, but I can try the blazer, right? So yeah, so now I clicked on that blazer on the right. What it is showing me now is, do you recognize this domain, dressx.com? So if I were to click on continue, what would happen is it will take me to the old web 2.0 site, dressx.com site, where I can go and check. So that is the thing we have today, but you can also completely buy and do things within the metaverse, this Decentraland metaverse. So let's just go ahead and then click on this continue here. Yeah, it took me to this site. It's a nice blazer here, cloud blazer as they call it. Now, if I want to own this, all I need to do is upload my photo, pay $30. This blazer costs $30. Upload my image, and they'll Photoshop and fit this blazer into me. Right. So that's about it with respect to DressX. And you will also get the non-fungible token, which means this blazer will only belong to you. So that's the DressX retail store. Yeah, I'm back in the store now. Let's go into the JP Morgan's office. So what you see ahead of you is the JP Morgan office. Again, yeah, so we are getting to the JP Morgan office. We have walked a bit. So behind me, you can see the retail store that we came from, right? So that is there. Now let's go into the JP Morgan's office. Yes, that's a digital tiger walking in the reception. So what JP Morgan says here is that there is no financial or other professional products advice. They're not giving any of that yet. Right now, it is only a showcase. Right? Let's avoid the tiger and go and see the other things. Okay, so there is something on the wall. So if I click on it, it will give me the timeline of the company. But get away, tiger! Come on. So yeah, now I click. So I'm not going to click on it because then, yeah, I would rather click on this video here. That's a video of one of their products. As you can see, you can just load a video in the metaverse space inside in your office. Yeah, so that's it. Now there is also a first floor that JP Morgan has. Let's visit there and see what's in there. Yeah, so I'm in the first floor now. And the first floor seems to have more digital displays on the wall, and there's a table there. So on the table you have some books. Maybe if I click on it, I can read that book. Yeah, I am clicking on it. So as previously said, it took me to the website where I can see the book that they had recommended. It's a book on cryptocurrency markets and basically a crypto 101. So this is how Metaverse looks like. You have experienced Metaverse now, so you can't say you do not know Metaverse anymore. Okay. So having looked at what Metaverse is, now let's look at what Metaverse as a service is all about. So we had already, I mean, there was a previous session where people were talking about anything can be made as a service. Vinodh was talking, the other Vinodh was talking about it. Now here, again, I'm not going to talk about this. I'm going to explain this definition, but rather Metaverse as a service is basically taking each of these components and then providing it as a service, or vertically integrate all of these services and then provide it as a service. And why would anyone go for Metaverse as a service? Because companies who will use those services would be able to build their experiences at a fraction of the cost and very less time. So this is what I have put together, the components of the Metaverse. So if you see, the underlying foundational component is the network and the infrastructure, where you have things like 5G and 6G. Then 5G and 6G network, 5G networks are already here. You know that cloud has been there for a long time now. MEMS is microelectronic mechanical sensors, and that's been there for a while as well. And GPUs are needed for creating the gaming in the virtual world today. So you will see a bunch of companies giving all these as service already. And companies like Airtel here in India and Vodafone, and these companies, what they are doing is they are trying to utilize 5G to come up with localized data centers. So that way your latency is really good, and you would also get higher network speeds. And the next layer is hardware. This is where all the big players come in, like companies like Microsoft and Apple and all those people are trying to build a hardware first, because not everyone can do that. Companies like Samsung as well, right? So things like smart glasses, wearables, gestures, neural hardware, which can talk to your brain directly without you having to move a muscle. You can control the virtual world, things like that. Then the decentralization component. This is very important. I would like to talk about blockchain, about blockchain a bit more here. Around 10 years back, when the blockchain came, and it basically disrupted the finance industry, because now if I want to send you some money, if I want to transact with you, I don't need the Reserve Bank, or I don't need the local banks here. I can directly work with you, and then I can transfer the money without any commission or any surcharge. And it put the security and the control back to the customers, right? So a decentralized metaverse is also built on the same principles of blockchain. It follows the same protocols. So that way, everything around the decentralized metaverse is as free and as open as the cryptocurrency market today, right? So then there is spatial computing. We are talking about virtual things, right? We're talking about virtual reality, gamings, and all that. So all those engines needs to be built by someone. There are a bunch of companies who's doing that right now, and those are provided as services as well. And then this creator economy. So the creator economy is very important, because it's like the design tools that needs to be built for the experiences that can be built in the metaverse, right? So those are a bunch of companies that are working on that. And discovery. So today in our web 2.0, discovery happens mostly through Google, right? You go to Google, you search something, and that's how you find a store or a social media, whatever it is. But in metaverse, how would that play out, right? So that's one thing you need to, that is going to be completely changed. So think of how will you find somebody in the metaverse. Then how would you figure out the ratings of a particular establishment? How will you find a particular store, right? So these are the things that needs to be built by companies, and will be provided as service. And ultimately the experience part, which is the most important here, because things like what Microsoft and Facebook are talking about, giving you a space to work, giving you a space to collaborate with your friends and even strangers, play games. All these experiences needs to be built. and all these experiences will be given as a service to you. And one interesting component is meta life, right? So you live in the metaverse from the beginning of the day till the end of the day, and maybe you wish not to do anything. You can just stay there and relax and have a digital drink or something and watch what's happening around you. So that's also an experience that you will have in the metaverse world. Now, I talked about multiple layers here. A company can come in and vertically integrate many of these and then provide a single metaverse. For example, a company can sign up with Airtel, or maybe Reliance would be a better example. So Reliance already has a 5G network. They can bring their own Geo smartphone and use their Geo cloud, and then ultimately build a metaverse and provide you the services on top of it, right? So that is how these services would emerge. Yeah, so there are few examples of metaverses today. It's slowly loading. So whatever I was talking about until now, there are companies who's already doing it now. It's not way into the future or anything. So for example, companies like Sandbox and Decentraland, Somnium Space, these are decentralized metaverses that exist today. And these are the popular ones. And there are centralized ones as well. Minecraft, Fortnite, these are owned by companies. So the distinction between a centralized and decentralized metaverse is that a centralized metaverse is owned by a single entity. So for example, tomorrow when Facebook comes up with their own metaverse, it will be owned by Mark Zuckerberg. If he doesn't like you, he can throw you out of the metaverse, right? So which is not possible in a decentralized metaverse, because in decentralized metaverse there will be a distributed creators and community people, thousands of people in fact, who will get together and vote and decide everything, like I told you sometime back. That is the huge distinction here. And in addition, there are all the other supporting companies here. For example, the hardware comes from companies like Microsoft HoloLens, Samsung, Xbox, and companies like this. Right, page is loading. Yeah, so this is a timeline, but again, it is kind of irrelevant, because this was kind of, when metaverse happened, people went back and thought, okay, this is the timeline, which is why I hadn't put it in right in the beginning. So if you look at this timeline, Second Life, which is a virtual space, was introduced in 2003. But people talk about the Snowflake novel that talked about metaverse in 1990s. But yeah, if you think of it, except this part, all the way from 2003 to sometime in 2014, or rather in 2020, everything else is gaming. So I can just say, instead of saying how the metaverse has evolved over the years, I could just call this the timeline for gaming. That's the nature of the metaverse, because everything happens in the virtual world, right? So here, if you see, we're talking about PlayStation, World of Warcraft, Amazon Quest, which is basically a video streaming game video streaming service. They bought it for around $1 billion, and we're still talking about Minecraft and Fortnite here until Decentraland became mainstream, and then Facebook came and announced about the Meta. And still, even now, people think that Facebook owns the metaverse. That is totally not true. Metaverse, there is in fact not a single metaverse. There are going to be hundreds of metaverses, and each metaverse would be owned by a community of people. And then there will be metaverses like what Facebook is talking about, which is owned by a single person. Now, I would like to talk about these big companies, what will happen to them, right? So Facebook, as you know, they know everything from what happens right from the beginning of the day till end of the day for each and every user of Facebook. So they are using that data, the social graph, and then building a deeper customer graph using that, which means they are interlaying all the data they know into the metaverse, and then trying to provide you a service that is unparalleled, an experience that is unparalleled. So for that, they're building a computing and engagement platform. And in addition to that, there is also this hardware element that they are doing through Oculus. And commerce already happens in Facebook today. So which means that they are like thinking of, they're aspiring to become something like Amazon of the metaverse, right? So that's their dream. Microsoft has a very clear-cut thinking. They want to be the place to go and work when it comes to metaverse, right? So that's what they are doing. They're trying to integrate their Microsoft Office into metaverse, and bring in the teams and bring in a virtual element, and that's what they are working on. And Google, Amazon, and Apple had been secretive, except for Google's AR headset. Not much is known, but there are a lot of news that comes up, but not, they themselves do not announce much. So what, but still I would highlight a couple of things here. Amazon stands to benefit in a big way here because of their web services, Amazon Web Services, their cloud service, right? So what could happen here is Amazon could build tools outside the metaverse. Things like if I have to build a store today, they can give you the right tools to build a design a store, something like a no code kind of a way wherein anyone can build the store, right? A digital retail store can be built outside the metaverse, and then once it is built, it can be sent to all the different metaverses. Those kind of services are possible for companies like Amazon, and the same applies to Google and Microsoft Cloud as well. But Amazon is a big player here, and ultimately, Apple is secretive, but then we know this company. This is the company that came up with the mouse. This is the company that introduced, that revolutionized the smartphone industry, Apple Watch, the smartwatch industry, and then the the earphones as well, right? What they did to the earphone industry. So having said all that, they are currently working on virtual reality headset. And in the future, what is being speculated is that they will come up with brain-computer interfaces, which can, using which you can control the metaverse, your reality of the metaverse, using your brain impulses, and you don't have to do anything about it. So that's the way these companies are looking at it. Now I'm coming to the almost to the end of this session. So last couple of slides. So this one is what would other companies, so we looked at all the big companies, right? What would the tech companies do? How would they provide metaverse as a service? Right? There are a few things that they could do. The first one is advisory. Now companies like Thoughtworks are already into this. So providing advisories, like let's say Gucci wants to go into metaverse, right? They want to have, they already have a digital presence, by the way. I'm just taking an example. So if Gucci wants to be in metaverse, business consulting firms will work with them, understand their positioning in the physical world today, and then determine what kind of a product and experience can they build and then provide to the customers. And similarly, what kind of personalization could be done in metaverse. So metaverse is all about personalization and hyper personalization, right? So what could be done there is something that every single company needs to figure out, and that's where tech and then business consulting firms will come into play. And finally, build versus buy. So I showed you an army of different companies available which are already building products. So what of those products should you take as a company, and which of those should you build on your own? So those are things that needs to be figured out. The second element is innovation. So metaverse in itself is a huge emerging technology based solution, right? So innovation plays a very big part here. Building, so companies would benefit by having innovation labs and building rapid prototyping, building POCs and proof of concepts and proof of technologies, build accelerators, and using that ultimately figure out new business models that are specific to the metaverse, right? So that's a big area. And finally, domain intensive solutions, right? So these are specific to a particular domain. For example, there could be companies that will build, for example, a retail store in the metaverse as a service. So if you subscribe with them, they will build your retail store in a matter of like few days, instead of you having to build it over like months or even years. So those kind of solutions would emerge eventually in every domain. And the underlying aspect of things is, if I am a company, let's say I am a grocery retailer, right? So now I need to start thinking about how do I integrate metaverse into my core, right? And once I have done that, then the next step is to reimagine my core business operations in the context of metaverse, and making metaverse as my core, and then build my entire business around it. And finally, as a consequence of doing step 2, you will end up in carving ecosystems which would create an experience which is unparalleled for the customer in the real world, right? So like I said, metaverse in retail, these are the possibilities. Now companies can come up with building stores, right? So that's what I previously talked about, retail stores as a service in the metaverse. And digital native assets, which is non-fungible tokens. These are digital only assets. Gucci has already built that. This is one of their assets. This could be provided as a service by design agencies and even tech agencies, like tech companies. And third is redefining merchandising. So today, the life cycle of building from a design to actually releasing a product could be, for an aggressive company, it could be like less than 30 days, but it goes all the way to 6 months to even a year in some apparel retailers case. That could be completely redefined, because the moment you make a design, you can release it in the metaverse and then see how the world is responding to it. and even let the creators in the metaverse to make tweaks to it. And then, ultimately when something is really good and you see that customers are liking it, you can then build it in the physical world. Build meaning you can actually make that apparel. And finally, augmented operations. Now that everything will be in metaverse, you have to redefine your entire store operations, the warehouse operations, and how you will fulfill orders. Everything has to be automated and reworked completely ground up, so that your workforce also is part of the metaverse, and they come together in one way and provide a completely new experience altogether. So that's all I had. So I can take questions now.
Hey, thank you so much, Vinodh. For everyone who thought immersive would not be this real, now I think all of them would know why we call you our hackathon mastermind. We have a couple of questions from the audience, so I'd request you to answer a few of them.
Okay.
First one we have is from Anisha Vinodh. She mentioned that she is really excited to explore this interesting topic and has always wanted to ask this to an expert. Who do you think will control metaverse?
So yeah, that's my wife pulling my leg. She didn't tell me she's going to ask that question. So so see, the way metaverse is going to work is there are two types of metaverses. One will be controlled by the big people, right? The Facebooks and the Microsofts, who are currently running the Web 2.0. In Web 3.0, they will try to create similar experience, which are extension of what we see in the world today. And those ones are called centralized metaverses. In fact, they are not even called as metaverses in a pure play metaverse scenario. But the other kind of metaverse, which is the exciting part, will not be controlled by a single company or a person. Rather, it will be controlled by a group of people, which is called as decentralized autonomous organization. These people will collectively make decisions, and in fact, you can even go and see their Trello board. It's all completely open. What feature is going to come, everything is open. They vote and decide, and if you want, you can go and join them and also start voting and become an influencer and make changes. That is how decentralized metaverses work.
Thanks, Vinod. And thank you, Anisha, for not asking him separately. Otherwise, we would have missed on this answer.
Yeah.
Next, we have the question from Nirmal that why do you think are people buying NFTs?
Yeah, with NFTs, there is an element of craze and going with the flow and things like that. But today, if you see, the Gen Z is already in metaverse. They are already in the digital world. They're saying that more than 50% of the Gen Z is already using metaverse, right? So they understand the value of a digital item. It's similar to what we do in music, right? We buy Spotify subscription, right? We do that because we can experience music. Similarly, people are understanding that they can experience the virtual world when they buy these digital assets. That is the scenario today, but it doesn't. I understand for many of you it doesn't make sense. But in the future, think of it like this: you can buy a very nice blazer from. You can buy a very nice handbag from Gucci, and this Gucci handbag is only available in the metaverse. It's not available in the physical metaverse. It's only available in the digital metaverse, not in the physical world. You can, the moment you buy it, they'll give you an NFT, which means in the whole of metaverse, nobody can copy it. That's the key element here. Now, today we are saying, why would you pay, millions of dollars for a JPEG file, right? That's because we are still not into the metaverse. Once you go into the metaverse, these NFTs will be in 3D. It can be worn similar to what we see in like Instagram filters today, right? How the Instagram filters work today. Similarly, you will be able to select and wear your own apparel, wear your own handbag, wear your own hat. And many of these will be so unique that it will give you special powers in that metaverses. Sounds exciting now, right? So that is where it will head to, and that is why people will buy, an NFT.
Thanks, Vinod. The next question is asked by Abhinav, and he wants to know what is the environmental impact of metaverse.
Yeah, so that's a complicated question. So a lot of people, there is this problem of the underlying technology taking a lot of computing power. For example, I don't know if you remember this, right? So in order to mint one Ethereum coin, the amount of computing capability it takes is equivalent to someone like you watching 1 year full of YouTube videos. That's the kind of compute power it takes. You get the point, right? It's approximately that is how much power it takes. That is the current scenario. When we start something, that is how it will be. Eventually, this whole environmental impact will be figured out, and then we will. In fact, if you think of metaverse, if you don't have to go to office and work, but rather work with them at home, that kind of creates a positive environmental impact. So similarly, you will see everything around us completely need to be reimagined. One of the things I was showing about the BlackBerry phone in my beginning screens. So as I was researching, I figured out one thing. BlackBerry was originally making pages. I didn't know that. Okay. And one of the reasons why the BlackBerry phones looks like that is because their predecessor to the phone was a pager, and whose keypad used to be like that. All they have done is they have extended the screen a bit higher and then called it a phone. So this context we never know. We think why the BlackBerry looks the way it looks, right? So similarly, today we are looking at it from a Web 2.0 world, and then trying to figure out why is things looking like this? Why is the environmental impact so high? Why are people buying NFTs? But once you go into metaverse and things become mainstream, things will fall in place, and we will make sense of everything.
Thank you, Vinod. I think the BlackBerry information was new to most of us. And in terms of environment, I just think that just like in software right now, Green Software Foundation and a lot of other initiatives are taking place. Hopefully, with the new world, we will be trying to invent things on those aspects as well, wherein we reduce the environmental impact or create more positive impact. Another question that we have is from Ravindra. Like, we have ghost profiles on social media. Will our metaverse personas continue to exist and grow in metaverse?
Yeah, it's an interesting question that needs to be figured out yet. So it's all how the metaverse. So like I told you, there are many metaverses. If one of these DAOs that is running a metaverse finds a way to figure out ghost profiles and somehow eliminate them, then that is quite possible that we won't have ghost profiles. But I don't see that level of control happening in the metaverse, considering the kind of openness they are allowing. Right? Maybe if somebody is not active for let's say so many years, they might be pushed to a place like a cemetery. I don't know. So such kind of experiences might emerge in the future, but as of today, no.
I think technology sometimes, not sometimes, always acts like a double-edged sword. So few things are always unpredictable there. Next question, I think this is the last one. This is from Yamini. Why do we need metaverse when the same can be experienced physically? It may be used in the exception, but what is the business use case?
Brilliant question, actually. So today we have two things: one, physical space, and digital space. Right? Digital space is nothing but we go to .com, we go to mobile app, and then explore a product and then purchase it. But at the same time, the moment we want to have a feel of things, we don't go to the mobile app and do it. Right? We go to the physical store, get a feel of a product, and then if we are only satisfied with that, we go ahead and buy it. Right? But in the metaverse, they are trying to bring both of these into one single thing. So things like smart gloves will let you feel things. You can actually feel how a fabric will feel in your hand. Similarly, there are metaverses where they are considering to somehow introduce the sense of smell. Right? If you are walking past a pizza shop, you must be able to get the sense of smell. These are still in research, but eventually they want to bring all of this. In which case, you will actually walk into a store. You will pick a apparel and then feel it in a way that you will physically feel it when you actually go to the store, and then still do a price comparison like in online, because there would be an element that will let you do that. And once you've compared the price, you decide should you buy it from there or should you buy it from everywhere. So it's basically the convergence of .com, mobile, and the physical reality that we have today.
Thanks, Vinodh. So with that, we can wrap it up. Thank you so much, and thanks Anisha, Nirmal, Abhinav, Ravindran, Yamini. I think these curious minds added more meat to this whole session, and we got to know a lot more. Thanks again once again, Vinodh.
A pleasure.
Hey, thanks, Vinodh. I have a few more questions in the stack, but I think I'll share them with you separately, and we can get back to the folks.